One topic I've seen discussed a lot since IK Multimedia released their Tonex pedal is what is better, DI captures or direct captures or amp and cab captures? As anybody who has done any captures or used Tonex knows, there's different ways that we can actually go about capturing our amps. We can take just a DI out of it, whether that be with the Tonex capture box, taking the speaker output right into our interface and recording that, or by using a dedicated line out that already exists on the amp that we have, if there is such a thing. Now, some folks swear that that is the most accurate way to actually utilize the Tonex capture. Some folks want to take the Tonex pedal, turn the cab off, feed it into a power amp, and feed a real guitar cab. And they feel that the DI or direct captures are best for that. And that may very well be the case. I'm not here today to tell you what you should be doing or which one's better. That's all going to be very subjective. Whatever is working for you, if it's truly in fact working for you, then there's your answer. But I wanted to show what the difference is between those. So what I did is on one of my recent captures, my Rect Z Ultimate Bundle, which is a capture of the amazing Dr. Z Z-Rec Junior amplifier. I absolutely love these captures. I'll play you a little demo video later in this video just so you can hear what those sound like in the mix. But while I was doing that, I captured not only the amp and cab version of the captures, but I also captured a DI version of it and an impulse response of just the cabinet that I was using with the same mic placement, same signal chain as the amp and cab capture. So I thought it would be kind of cool to take the DI'd capture and apply the same impulse response as I was using in the setup for the amp and cab and just compare them and see what, if any, differences there are. And again, this is just more for a little enlightenment on the topic. This isn't to say that anybody should be doing one or the other. With my tone model bundles, for instance, with the Rect Z, you're getting both the DI captures and the amp cab captures. So you kind of get the best of both worlds, and you have your choice as to which one you feel works better for you. So without further ado, let's go dive over to Cubase with a couple instances of Tonex and compare the difference between these two different ways of capturing. All right, so here we are over in Cubase, and you'll notice what I have here is I have two Cubase tracks. I can actually enlarge these a little bit. And one is called direct capture and one's called amp cab capture. And on those two tracks, what I did is I just recorded a DI'd guitar. If I actually just turn off Tonex here. Okay, you hear that it's just my DI'd guitar. If I engage Tonex, there we have it being processed. So I just duplicated that track so we have the exact same performance on both. And then I have two instances of Tonex here. What I have is one that is called direct capture and one that is called amp cab capture. Now you'll notice here on the tone model I'm utilizing is the Rect Z Di3. And that's going to be the identical settings to the Rect Z Ultimate 3 over here, which has the cab baked into it. Whereas this one, I'm just applying the same cab with the same mic and settings and signal chain, but shot as an impulse response. So you're hearing the direct captured amp with an impulse response, the same impulse response or the same setup as the baked in cab over here. So these should be pretty close, I guess. I don't know. Let's see what happens. We don't need to look at this anymore for now. We will come back to it. I'll just close those out. So when we're hearing this one here, direct capture versus amp cab capture, that's what you're hearing. This is the direct with the custom impulse response applied, and this is the baked in amp cab capture. Okay, so let's listen to this. You will notice one thing. I had to add 3.5 dB of volume to get these to match because we want to hear these at the exact same volume. They're matched to within 1/10 of a dB on the LUFS meter. So that's as close as I can get them. And they sound pretty close to me as well. Otherwise, if they're at different volumes, we're not going to be able to discern the actual difference between the tones. Rather, we'll just be hearing a volume difference and that will fool us. So let's listen to the direct capture and then I'll let this loop and then I'll switch back and forth. When I solo out the amp cab capture, that's when you're listening to that. When I take that solo off, you're listening to the direct capture. Let's hear what these sound like. First, the direct capture. All right, so what are your thoughts on that? Obviously a difference. I mean, they're not wildly different, I guess. I mean, if you plugged into one without hearing the other, you'd probably just go, yeah, it sounds fine. It's great. It's good. But now what happens when we swap out to a different impulse response or cab? Now, what you'll notice I've done here is I've swapped out for a different custom impulse response I made of my Rev 112 cab with warehouse speakers. And this is mic'd with a Cascade Fathead ribbon mic, and applied that to both of these. I had to do a couple little gain adjustments just to make sure they're matched. And again, now here is the sound of the direct captures with this completely different impulse response, and then the amp cab captures being swapped out with a cab that it was never really designed to work with. We're relying on the software algorithm to remove the part of the tone that they think is the cab, and we're applying a new cab to it. Again, I almost feel like either tone would be usable, but here is where it gets interesting. I almost think I prefer the direct capture. It seems to be a more pure capture of what's happening with that amp. And then when we want to swap cabs out, it seems like it's kind of accepting the new cab in a more accurate way to me, knowing what this is supposed to sound like because I created these captures. If that's a good way to describe it, maybe it isn't. But the amp cab capture seems like maybe it's great with the cab it was meant to be captured with, but swapping to this other impulse response, I'm maybe not getting exactly what I want from it. Yeah, I definitely kind of think I prefer the direct capture after we've swapped the IRs. All right, so there you have the difference between the DI capture and the amp cab capture. I think the amp and cab capture, when captured together as one, is ideal because what's happening is, and I've proven this myself, when I make these captures, I actually record myself playing a DI track. I reamp it through that system and I record the actual guitar in the room as it's been mic'd, and I have that as a baseline reference. And later when I create the tone model, I reamp through that tone model in the software. It's very easy to do. I just have to apply an instance of the Tonex plugin on it, and then I compare those two, and they're uncanny how close they are. In fact, I have a hard time even differentiating between the two. So obviously that is capturing what I want. It's giving me the exact thing I set up. I've mic'd that amp, I've positioned that mic carefully, I've run it through a particular signal chain, I've got it sounding exact, and then when I get the tone models, it does sound exact. But the problem comes when we try to switch out cabs. I don't know if we're getting the most accurate representation of the amplifier anymore. It's not terrible, but with the DI capture, if we are planning on swapping cabs, it seems like that may give us a little bit of a more accurate picture of what that amp actually sounds like. This is all just in my opinion, and your mileage may vary with this, and I'm not going to argue with anybody who's saying, oh no, I'm doing it this way and it's working great. Then you should carry on doing it that way. I just thought this would be a bit of an enlightening video to showcase what the actual difference is between the amp cab captures and the DI captures in as sort of much of a controlled way as we possibly can. And I hope it was helpful. So I'm not saying that if you have an amp cab capture, you can't change the cab out. Obviously we can. We can do whatever we want. Ultimately, if you take an amp cab capture and switch to a different impulse response or cab and it's sounding perfect and amazing and incredible, what do we care? That's great. It doesn't matter if that's what that particular combination would have sounded like at the time it was being made. It's really about what we're hearing and what we're getting out of it. If we're getting the tone we want, then there's your answer and off we go. I wouldn't worry too much about it. But I thought this would be kind of interesting just to show those differences so people could actually have somewhere to point to and say, look, that is what the difference is, either using the DI or the amp cab, and then we can make our decisions from there. Whatever decision you decide to make is the right one if you're getting the results you want. So I hope that that was useful. I'm going to leave you with the demo for my Z-Rect Ultimate Bundle, which includes both the amp cab baked in version and the DI version. The link is below to both a free ToneNet version of that as a little sample, and I'll have a link below to my website where you can get the full bundle if you're so inclined. So thank you guys so much for tuning in, sharing your time with me. Please like the video, share it with anybody you think would get some use or enjoyment out of watching it. And also please subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell notification to get notified when I put new content out. I'll be back really soon with some more. Thank you guys again so much for tuning in. Ciao for now.